Very good evening to you, and welcome to this final session of this week, full of some really brilliant, insightful information from colleagues within the church, and I had the pleasure of delivering yesterday as well. And we've covered some fantastic ground together. We started off looking at anxiety at the beginning of the week and how to practically deal with that. And then Hajit introduced us into the world of positive thinking and how to shift thinking and focus into more of a positive way. And Deborah gave us an insight into shame and how to practically deal with and manage shame so it becomes something that you work with rather than it work against you. We've looked at depression and how to encourage yourself and others to step out of depression. And then yesterday we looked at perhaps just bringing a bit more balance to ourselves as we manage this this time of lockdown. And I'd like to kind of bring all that together really, and just speak to you about something that I spend quite a bit of time talking to clients about, and it centers around the powerful nature of and the power of self-talk. How we talk to ourselves in a positive or negative way, as Hajit was suggesting, kind of sits quite well with what we were talking about last night as well, about the seesaw, when you've got positive thoughts up here and you've got negative thoughts here, and you can switch very quickly from a positive to a negative thought and a negative to a positive thought, or on, off, in, out, good, bad. They're quite extremes of thinking. And we spoke yesterday about the most helpful place on that seesaw, if you like, is in the middle, where you're seated in the middle and the movement is a lot less. And I'd call that the reflective balance space, where you allow yourself to be in a place where you can make informed decisions that aren't extremes. So they're not catastrophizing and being extreme, and they're not making something the other end of the scale. So there's some balance in the middle. Now we're all, as Hajit probably explained really well this week, we are such powerful thinkers. This top 2 inches on the top of our head is so powerful in how we manage life. We have 16,000, we have 16,000 plus thoughts a day to navigate. Most of them are either in the past, in the future, they haven't happened, or they have happened. They're very few are centered on what's happening on the here and now, right in front of our eyes. And we have to try and navigate this and make sense of it. And we do that by relying on things like experiences in the past. Some of them can be really helpful. Some of them can be quite unhelpful. So the filing cabinet of thoughts and how we've dealt with things in the past in our head come to the forefront, and we end up dealing with things in front of us as we perhaps would have done as children in our formative years, or how we saw parents acting as we were growing up. And we adopt these different ways of dealing with things, and sometimes they can be incredibly unhelpful. So what I'd like to center this little session on is just to give you some awareness of how powerful we can influence our own thinking, how our own thinking can trip us up. And the example that I'm going to give for that comes from the book of Luke, and it's Luke 15:17 to 21, quite a familiar verse to many of us, but just listen to the crooked thinking in the prodigal son. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread? But I perish here with hunger. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired hands." And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Now, before he'd even got anywhere near to his father, He'd already made his mind up of the outcome of that situation. The power of his own thinking had already determined the outcome, and it was completely the polar opposite to what actually happened. The father, like the Father our God in heaven, ran to meet him and embraced him as his son. So the reason I've shared that is because it's a fantastic example of how we can predict, we can mind read, we can fortune tell, all of these things that we think may happen. And it's so relevant to what we're going through at the moment because there is so much unknown in front of us. And yet the power of the Father was there to stand firm and say, son, I've got you. I'm here for you. And that's exactly the same as our God in heaven. So where do we go then with this top 2 inches on our head that sometimes takes us down paths that isn't really helpful? My invitation to you today is just to keep things really, really simple and use some of the tools that we've heard about this week. And I'm going to encourage you to start to think about this seesaw analogy that I shared with you yesterday, and start to try and recognize when you feel, or think, should I say, when you think and then you start to feel that there's extremes of balance. So happy 1 minute, sad the next, good 1 minute, bad the next. When it's going like this and you need to find a little bit of balance in the middle, I'm going to invite you to push the pause button and just to sit with the thoughts that you're experiencing at the time. Because every single thought that we have that goes through our mind is available to be challenged. We don't have to accept it for what it comes in or how it comes into our mind. So anything and everything that we think can be reframed. But it takes a little bit of time just to sit down and to really think through what it is or what it is that you're thinking. And that may mean, as Deborah explained yesterday, talking to somebody, whether it be friends, family, sibling, that you trust and that you can go to and you can just talk about what it is that's troubling you. Because most of the time, other people will have a different helpful perspective on what might be quite crooked in your own head. You think about that prodigal son walking up the drive. He'd already made his mind up that the reaction that he was going to receive was a negative one, and actually it couldn't have been farther from the truth. So I'm going to keep the message quite simple and just leave it there for this evening. And just to recap, it's the power of your own thinking. You own your thoughts. You have the ability to challenge them. You don't have to accept them if they're proving to be unhelpful. So thank you very much. I hope that's been of some help for you. You are a very powerful thinker. I really, really look forward to getting back into a room with everybody so we can spend time together again, although we will keep on using this medium because it's a fantastic way to keep together. So let's finish my prayer. Thank you, Lord God, for such a wonderful, powerful, insightful week of helpful tools and coaching from some amazing people within the church that have given up their time to share things that will help other people. And I just pray that out of everything that's been shared this week, there is 1 or 2 golden nuggets that people have heard that they can practically put into their lives to help them move forward during this time. I pray for everybody that's dialed into these calls, and I pray for everybody that hasn't managed to dial into these calls, those that are far away from home. And I just pray, Lord, that you'll just keep us safe, keep us focused, keep us on track in the reassurance and knowledge that we are all prodigal sons at the end of the drive, looking at you at the end of the drive, in the knowledge that you are there to greet us whenever we need to come to you. I thank you, Lord, and I praise your name. Amen. Thank you very much, and goodbye.